Jacques Carter stared out the window of his ship, the Iron Raven, as it floated silently above the ruined planet of Iran 7. Ash clouds covered the sky, and what was once a city now looked like a graveyard. He hated places like this, broken worlds, where people were thrown away like trash. But this time, he wasn't here for money, not really. He was here because he said yes to one last job. The message was clear. Pick up the cargo, no questions, deliver it to the buyer at Varga Station. When he arrived at the location, he expected weapons or tech, maybe stolen fuel cells. Instead, he found a woman and a child. They stood in the corner of a burned-out shelter. The woman, tall but thin like a shadow, had soft purple skin and deep golden eyes. Her clothes were torn, her arms bruised. The girl, no older than 7, stood behind her, holding tightly to her leg. She was silent, her eyes wide and frightened. "This is the cargo?" Jacques asked the local handler, a greasy man with sharp teeth and a bad attitude. "Yeah," he said, laughing. "The widow and her brat. Nobody wants them. Just get them off-world." Jacques felt something turn in his stomach. This wasn't cargo. This was slavery. But he had already taken the payment, already said yes. He just needed to finish the job. As they walked toward his ship, the girl stumbled. Jacques caught her without thinking. She looked up at him, her eyes big and wet. She didn't say a word. But she didn't pull away either. He didn't know why. But that small hand gripping his sleeve felt like a chain on his soul. Inside the ship, he gave them a small room with a bed and water. They didn't ask for anything, didn't speak. The mother sat quietly, eyes staring at the wall. The girl curled up beside her, still holding his jacket like it was a blanket. Jacques sat in the cockpit, looking at the coordinates for Varga Station. It was a slave hub disguised as a trade market. He'd been there before, many times. Always quick drops, never staying long, never caring. But tonight, he couldn't press the launch button. His fingers hovered over it, frozen. He looked at the camera feed showing the mother and child. They were broken, but alive. If he delivered them, they'd be gone forever. Used, sold, forgotten. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Memories hit him like fire. Another girl, long ago, with eyes like his own. His daughter, lost in the early wars. He never found her body, only ash. He never forgave himself. He stood up quickly, heart racing. He walked back to the room. The woman looked at him as he entered, still no fear in her eyes, just emptiness. "I'm not taking you to Varga," Jacques said quietly. The mother blinked slowly, confused. "I don't know where yet," he added, "but not there." The girl looked up, and for the first time, a tiny flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. Jacques turned and walked away. He needed to erase the tracker, change the logs. If the syndicate found out, he broke the deal. They'd hunt him, but he didn't care. He'd made his choice. Back in the cockpit, he deleted the mission data, changed the ship ID, and powered down external signals. They were off the grid now, alone, but free. He cooked a small meal, warm soup and old bread. He brought it to their room and placed it on the floor. The woman looked at him, then at the food. She nodded once, her voice soft. "Thank you." The girl whispered something too, but he couldn't hear. He leaned closer. She said it again, this time louder. "Safe." That one word hit Jacques harder than a bullet. He stood up slowly, fighting back the weight in his chest. "Yeah," he said, "you're safe now." But in his heart, he knew it wasn't true yet. The syndicate would come. They always did, still for the first time in years. Jacques felt something real, not guilt, not regret, but purpose. He wasn't running cargo anymore. He was protecting lives. As the Iron Raven flew into deep space, silent and hidden, Jacques didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone anymore. Asterisk in the cold dark of deep space. The stars looked peaceful, but peace was a lie. Jacques Carter knew it better than anyone. He sat alone in the cockpit of the Iron Raven. The ship was silent except for the soft hum of its engines. Behind him, in the crew quarters, the alien woman and her daughter slept quietly, but Jax didn't. Feel calm. He felt hunted. A red light blinked on his screen. Small, quiet, dangerous, tracking pulse detected. He cursed under his breath and leaned forward. They were being followed. The Syndicate had activated a ghost tracker buried deep in the ship's systems. Jax hadn't seen it. It was hidden. Like a shadow in code, he had two choices now: run forever or erase the ghost. He chose the second. He took the ship to a dead zone, an abandoned refuel port orbiting a dead moon. No signals, no patrols, no cameras, just dust, metal, and silence. Inside the control room, the lights flickered as he connected his datapad to the ship's core. The system pushed back. Old code screamed warnings in red text. Unauthorized access. Core restricted. Jax smiled. "Yeah, that's the point," he whispered. He began slicing through the system, layer after layer. Buried beneath engine logs and food storage data, he found it. Project, clean slate. It was more than a tracker. It was a full black market record. Names, prices, details of everyone who had ever been sold through Vargas Station. Even children, even infants. Jax scrolled through line after line. His hand shook. Lyraya and her daughter were just one of many, thousands, maybe more. He wanted to punch the screen, to scream, but instead, he copied everything onto a hidden drive and deleted the original. The system warned him again. This action cannot be undone. He pressed confirm without blinking. Back on the ship, Lyraya was awake, sitting quietly with her daughter. She watched Jax as he entered. He looked tired, angry, changed. "I burned their leash," he said, dropping the drive onto the table. She looked at the drive, then at him. "What is that?" she asked, voice soft but strong. "Evidence," he replied. "Proof of what they're doing." She touched the drive gently, like it was something holy. "We can stop them?" she asked. "Maybe," Jax said, "if we find the right people." The right voice. Little Sira stood beside her mother. She reached out and touched Jax's hand. "Family?" she whispered. Jax froze. He looked down at her, so small, so brave. He knelt and nodded slowly. "If you'll have me," he said. Lyraya smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile. It lit up her face. Not a smile of joy, a smile of survival. A smile that said, "We're still here." Suddenly, the ship's alarm buzzed, soft but urgent. Incoming transmission. No ID, no origin, just a signal, encrypted. Jax patched it through to a secure screen. A face appeared, old, scarred, familiar. It was Commander Reich, Jax's former war comrade. His voice was sharp, full of warning. "You've made enemies, Jax," he said. "They've placed a bounty on your head." Jax leaned forward. "How much?" he asked. "Enough to make devils rich," Reich replied. "You need to disappear. They'll come for the girl, the mother, and you." "I know," Jax said quietly. "Then why are you still here?" Reich asked. Jax glanced at Lyraya and Sira. "Because this time, I'm standing for something." The screen went dark. No more words. Just silence again. He turned to Lyraya. "We're not safe anymore," he said. "We never were." She replied. "But now we have you." They packed quickly. Jax changed the ship's signature again. He changed their names in the logs. He gave Sira a small bracelet, a false ID, to protect her. She giggled as she wore it. It was the first time he heard her laugh. It broke his heart and healed it at the same time. They flew off the dead moon. No destination yet, only direction, away. Jax didn't know where this path would lead. But one thing was clear. He wasn't just running anymore. He was fighting back, for the first time in a long time. He wasn't a smuggler. He was something else. He was family. The bounty didn't start with noise. It started with silence. A kind of silence that made your bones itch and your heart beat too loud. Jax Carter knew that kind of silence well. It was the kind that came right before a storm. He was fixing the ship's cooling system when the first sign appeared. A strange ping on the comms. Not a message, not a call, just a sound. A high-frequency burst. Encrypted, sharp, deadly. Jax froze, his hand still holding the coolant pipe. He tapped into the cum screen and ran a trace. Nothing, no origin. That's when he knew. It wasn't a message, it was a mark. A signal sent to bounty hunters, somewhere out there, in the dark space between systems. Killers had just learned. His name and the price on his head. He rushed to the cockpit, his heart racing. Lariah stood near the navigation panel. Eyes narrowed, she had seen it too. It has begun, she whispered. Jax didn't answer, he didn't need to. They both knew what this meant. No more hiding. Little Sierra sat on the floor, drawing stars with her fingers in the dust. She looked up as Jax entered. Bad people? She asked. Jax nodded. She walked to him and placed a small toy in his hand, a wooden animal carved from scraps. For luck, she said. Jax looked at it and smiled. Not because he believed in luck, but because someone still believed in him. They left orbit within minutes, jumped into deep space using blind routes. Jax had a plan, a dangerous one. He knew where to get answers. He knew someone who could tell him who ordered the bounty and why. But the place wasn't safe, and the person wasn't a friend, not anymore. They arrived at Kale Station, a floating metal ruin spinning near a gas giant. It wasn't listed on any legal map, but it was full of people, smugglers, hackers, ex-soldiers, and ghosts. As they docked, Lariah looked at Jax. Should we come with you? She asked. No, Jax said firmly. Stay on the ship, lock it down. If I'm not back in 2 hours, we come find you, she said, cutting him off. He looked at her and nodded slowly. Deal. Jax entered the station and moved through dark halls lit by broken lights. He passed rusted doors, oil-covered bots, and eyes watching from shadows. Then he found him, Varek, the broker of secrets. He sat at a round table surrounded by screens and smoke. Jax hadn't seen him in 5 years, not since the war ended. Well, Varek grinned, his mechanical eye blinking. If it isn't the ghost himself. I'm not here to catch up, Jax said coldly. Of course not, Varek chuckled. You're here because you're hunted. Jax tossed the tracker code onto the table. Who sent it? Varek scanned it, his smile fading. Oh, he whispered. You're in deeper than I thought. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. This isn't just a bounty, Jax, he said. This is a silencing order the Syndicate doesn't want. You dead for betrayal. They want you dead because you saw something. Jax felt his chest tighten. The records, he muttered. Varek nodded slowly. You stole their deepest secret. They'll burn systems to stop it from spreading. Jax stood quickly, ready to leave, but Varek grabbed his arm. There's something else, he said. They're not just coming for you. There's a second bounty on the girl. The world stopped. Jax's heart turned to fire. He pushed Varek away and ran, through the halls, past the broken bots. Back to the ship. When he arrived, the ramp was already down. Lariah stood at the top, her weapon raised. Behind her, 2 bodies lay on the ground, bounty hunters. Sierra stood behind her mother, holding a small knife with shaking hands. We had visitors, Lariah said, breathing hard. Jax ran to them, scanning for wounds. No. One's hurt, she added quickly. Jax knelt before Sierra. You okay, Starling? The girl nodded, but her hands trembled. Jax turned to Lariah. They want the girl alive, he said. Her eyes went cold. Then they'll never get her. They left the station in flames. Jax set a course with no name, no path, only one thought. Filled his mind. He couldn't run anymore. They needed to fight, not just to survive, but to expose the truth, to burn down the evil that hunted them. And if that meant going to war, so be it. Because now, this wasn't just about escape. This was about justice. Peace smelled like flowers. At least on Haven 3, it did. As the Iron Raven landed on the Green Valley world, Jax Carter stepped outside and breathed air that didn't taste like metal or fear. Birds chirped, wind rustled through golden trees, and small children played near a clear stream. It was the kind of place that didn't feel real. It felt like a dream you didn't want to wake from. This was where he hoped to hide, to give Lariah and Sierra a real roof, a real bed, a life, just. For a little while, they were welcomed by an elder named Callan, who ran the refugee colony. He wore a long cloak, his face lined with time, but his eyes were kind. "Stay as long as you need," he said. No questions. Jax didn't trust him right away. He didn't trust anyone anymore. But Sierra ran through the fields, laughing. And Lariah began to smile in her sleep again. For the first time since the mission began, Jax let himself relax. He helped fix water pipes, repaired old defense drones, and taught local kids how to hold a blaster, not to fight, but to protect. He didn't speak much about his past. He just said he was tired of running. One evening, he sat by the fire with Lariah, watching Sierra sleep beside them. "She's healing," Lariah said, voice soft like music. "So are you," Jax replied. They didn't speak more after that. They didn't need to, but peace doesn't last. Not when a price has been placed on your name. It started with smoke, not the kind from cooking fires, thicker, darker, a warning. Jax stood on a rooftop when he saw it rising from the trees. Then the sirens howled, not loud, broken, rusty, but loud enough to say one thing. "They're here." Lariah grabbed Sierra and ran toward the shelter as blaster fire echoed through the valley. Jax grabbed his rifle, eyes scanning the horizon. Syndicate ships had entered the atmosphere. Small, fast armed. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to finish the job. The colony's old defense drones powered up, stuttering in the sky. Jax shouted orders to the few volunteers he had trained. "Hold the gate, protect the families, no one gets through." Explosions shook the ground. Huts caught fire. Children screamed. And in the middle of it all, Jax saw something that made his blood freeze. Callan, the elder who had welcomed them, was standing with the invaders. He had sold them out, for credits, or fear, or both. Jax raised his rifle and aimed, but couldn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Not in front of Sierra. Lariah wasn't so patient. She stepped forward from the shadows, calm and deadly. She didn't carry a weapon. She didn't need one. She spoke loud and clear, in a language ancient and powerful. The syndicate soldier near Callan froze, confused. She raised her hand and made a small motion, a code from her diplomat training. Suddenly, one of the defense drones turned and fired, not at the colony, but at the enemy. Jax watched in shock as she took control of 3 more drones, using only her voice and movements. "Did I mention I was trained in planetary diplomacy?" she asked calmly. Jax grinned despite the chaos. "You forgot to mention the warrior queen part." Together, they fought, Jax with blasters, Lariah with drones and strategy. Sierra stayed hidden, protecting other children in the underground shelter the colony held, barely when the smoke cleared. The syndicate ships were burning wrecks. The few who survived ran, and Callan, the betrayer, lay wounded at the center of the square. Jax walked over, rifle in hand. Callan looked up, coughing. "I had no choice," he said. "You always have a choice," Jax replied, and walked away, leaving him for the colony to judge. That night, fires burned for warmth, not war. The people gathered in silence. They had lost homes, but not each other. Lariah sat beside Jax once more, a burn on her arm bandaged. Sierra slept beside them, dirt on her cheeks. "She was brave today," Jax whispered. "She takes after you," Lariah said. Jax shook his head. "No," he said. "She takes after you." Above them, stars moved slowly across the sky, and though Jax knew the syndicate wasn't finished, he also knew this. He wasn't alone in the fight anymore, and that changed everything. It began with a dream, but not the peaceful kind. This dream came with blood, fire, and screaming. Jax stood in a memory, not on Haven. His boots were wet with ash, the air filled with cries. Flames rose around a village not too different from the one he had just saved, but this time, he wasn't the protector, he was the invader. He heard his own voice, sharp and cold. "Clear the buildings, tag the survivors. Cargo goes to Vargas Station." And then, silence. except for one sound, a child crying. Jax woke up with a gasp, sweat soaking his shirt. It was still night on Haven. The stars above didn't care about guilt. But he did. He sat up, rubbing his face. Sierra was asleep beside Lariah, curled like a kitten. He watched them for a long time. Then he stood. He had to tell her. He found Lariah near the stream, collecting clean water. The moonlight touched her skin, soft and quiet. She turned as he approached, sensing something was different. "What is it?" she asked, voice gentle but alert. Jax couldn't look her in the eyes. He sat on a rock, staring at his hands. "These hands," he said slowly. "They've done terrible things." She said nothing, only waited. He took a deep breath. "I used to work for the Syndicate," he began. "Before I was a smuggler, before the war ended. I was a soldier, not for Earth, not for peace, but for profit." Lariah didn't interrupt. Jax continued. "My job was to clear zones, capture survivors, tag them, and ship them to stations. I never asked who they were or where they'd go. I didn't care. I just followed orders." His voice cracked. "I remember one mission, a small village, peaceful, full of alien families. They didn't fight. They begged. And he stopped, choking on the words. "I took a girl from her mother's arms," he whispered. "She looked like Sierra." The memory broke him. "I don't know what happened to them," he said, "but I never forgot their faces." Lariah stepped closer, her expression unreadable. He expected anger, hate, maybe even a slap. But she said only one thing. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know," Jax said. "Because I've been hiding, even from myself. And because every time I look at you and your daughter, I see the people I failed." Silence hung in the air like fog. Then Lariah knelt beside him. She touched his hand lightly. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "With everything in me," he answered. "I would give my life to undo it." She nodded slowly. "Then you've already started to make it right." Jax looked at her, shocked. "You forgive me?" Lariah's eyes shimmered in the moonlight. "I don't forgive the man you were," she said. "I forgive the man you are now. The one who saved my child, the one who stayed." Tears welled in Jax's eyes. He hadn't cried in years, not for war, not for loss. But now, something inside him finally broke and healed. Later that night, he returned to the ship. He opened the hidden drive he had taken from the Syndicate system and began writing a report, a full account, names, times, faces, routes, proof of crimes, confession of guilt, he titled it. "For the ones I failed." He encrypted it and set it to broadcast on secure rebel channels. Let the galaxy know the truth. The next morning, he found Sierra outside, watching the sunrise. She held the wooden toy he had given her, tracing its shape. She looked up at him. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled. "Getting there," he replied. She climbed onto his lap and rested her head on his chest. "Mom says you're a hero." Jax looked at the rising sun. "I'm trying to be," he whispered. And for the first time in his life, he believed it. Asterisk, the first light of war didn't come from blasters. It came from a sunrise. Gold spilled across the mountains of Haven like a slow promise. But Jax Carter knew better. Not all promises are kept. He stood at the edge of a cliff, watching the sky shift from black to fire. Below, farmers tilled the soil. Unaware of what he planned, behind him, the Iron Raven waited, engines warm. This wasn't just an escape ship anymore. It was a weapon, a symbol, a voice. Inside the cargo bay, Lariah prepared a message, a broadcast, not just to rebels, but to everyone. She wore her old diplomat's robe, stitched, faded, but still powerful. Her voice would speak for the silenced. Her face would expose the system that tried to erase her. Jax joined her, placing the encrypted drive on the table. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. Lariah looked at him with calm fire in her eyes. "I was born ready," she said. He pressed the console, and the broadcast went live. Across colonies, ships, moons, and outer rings, screens blinked on, confused faces appeared. And then, silence fell. Everyone listened. Lariah's voice filled the stars. I am Lariah of the Nalari people. She began. My planet was burned, my people sold, and my child hunted. This is our story. Images flashed. Stolen cargo logs, lists of names, coded trades. Jax's confessions, Sira's drawing of the Iron Raven. And then, the face of a child in chains, one among many. Lariah continued, We are not numbers. We are not property. We are life. If you hear this, know the truth. The syndicate is not business. It is blood. Then Jax appeared on screen, his voice steady. My name is Jax Carter, he said. I was part of the machine. I broke it. And I'm ready to burn the rest, he ended. The broadcast with coordinates, a meeting point, a place where those ready to fight could gather. Then they waited, 1 hour, 2, and then ships appeared. Not war fleets, not armies, just people, one by one, cargo ships, rusted transports. Tiny fighter pods, old rebels, hacked robots. Refugee crews. They answered the call, because they had nothing left to lose. Together, they formed the Edge Light Armada, named after the final words of Lariah's message. We will be the light at the edge of dark. Jax met with a few rebel leaders, including Reich, his old comrade. The man looked older, harder, but his voice still held respect. You've changed, Reich said. So has the war, Jax replied. The plan was dangerous. Strike the Syndicate's main comms relay on Vorga Prime. If they cut the signal, they'd break the trade network. No comms, no control. Chaos would spread, and light would pour in. As the ships approached the dark side of Vorga Prime, Jax sat in the Raven's cockpit with Sira beside him. She wore a headset, eyes scanning the radar like a pro. You ready, Captain? He asked, smiling. She nodded, serious. Ready. The battle began without warning. Laser fire lit the sky. Ships exploded like stars. But the Edge Light Armada held. Because they weren't just fighting for glory, they were fighting for each other. Jax weaved through debris, dodging fire. Lariah controlled the drone fleet from the back, issuing calm commands. Sira monitored frequencies, shouting alerts when enemies came too close. They fought as one, not as passengers, but as a family. The Raven reached the relay. Jax landed it on a narrow platform, fire raining around them. He ran with a charge pack, dodging explosions. He reached the core and slammed the override. The signal died across the galaxy. Slave trade beacons went dark. Buyers were confused. Traffickers stranded. The machine cracked. Jax ran back to the ship, breath heavy, as the Raven lifted off. He looked back and saw the tower collapse. Not just metal, but history when they rejoined the fleet. Cheers echoed through the comms, but Jax didn't cheer. He looked at Lariah and Sira. They weren't done. This was just the beginning, because war had started, yes, but so had something greater, hope. And sometimes, the smallest lights shine brightest, at the edge of everything. It started with soil, warm, rich, alive. Jax Carter dug his hands into the earth, planting a small green shoot with quiet care. Sunlight touched his face, not from a twin star system or a hostile planet, but from a place that finally felt real. The war was over, not by treaties or big parades, but because the voices once silenced had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. The Iron Raven was parked at the edge of the field, rusted but proud. It had flown through hell and fire. Now it rested, just like its crew. Lariah was teaching at a local school. Her voice carried wisdom and stories, not just about survival, but about healing. Children from a dozen species gathered to hear her speak. They called her Teacher Star. Sira had her own garden now, full of strange glowing flowers and tiny animals. She no longer hid behind Lariah's legs. She laughed, ran, shouted, and sometimes she even sang. One morning, a traveler stopped by the farm. He wore the uniform of a trader, his ship old but fast. He looked at Jax with curiosity. You live here? The man asked. Used to be a bounty on your head. Jax wiped his hands on a cloth and smiled. There was, he said. Now there's just tomatoes. The traveler tilted his head. Those women with you, your wife and daughter? Jacques looked toward the house where Lariah stood in the doorway, laughing with Sira. He paused, then nodded. Not by blood, he said, but by choice. The man smiled, gave a respectful nod, and left. Jacques watched his ship vanish into the sky, then turned back to his field. There were still weeds to pull, after all, later that evening. They sat together around a table, 3 plates, warm bread, glowing soup, stories in their eyes. Lariah lit a small lantern and placed it by the window. For the ones still searching, she whispered. It was a tradition now, one they had created. Sira looked up from her bowl. Can I ask something? Anything, Jacques replied. Do you ever miss the sky? He thought about it. The battles, the fire, the stars rushing past his window. He remembered running, fighting, hurting. And then he remembered the moment she first called him family. No, he said. I found something better. Sira smiled and kept eating. Lariah reached over and touched Jacques' hand. No words, just warmth. Outside, the wind danced through the trees, and high above, the stars still burned. But they weren't chasing him anymore. They were just lights. In the sky, one night, weeks later, a child from another village came to the door. He was dirty, alone, scared. Jacques opened the door and knelt. What's your name, kid? The boy shook his head. Don't remember. Jacques looked at Lariah, who nodded softly. He turned back to the boy. Well, he said, you don't need a name to eat soup. He stepped aside and let the child in. The family grew, slowly. Not by plan, not by blood, but by heart. They built a home, not just a house, but a place where the broken became whole, where the lost were found, where the hunted became free. And every night they lit the lantern by the window, for the ones still out there, for the ones still searching, because they knew what it felt like. And because family, real family, isn't who you're born with, it's who you choose and who chooses you.